Hi, this is Mary Beth Alumbaugh, and this is my discussion post for the Module 6 Introductory Discussion of Criticisms of FAPE, NDE, and LRE. So a little background on the scenario. I am a special education director for the state of Georgia back in August 5th of 2015, which the Washington Post published an article describing how the state was accused of illegally segregating thousands of students with behavior-related disabilities. And it's talking about what I would do if I were the special education director of the state of Georgia at this time. So the first question was, based on your knowledge of ADA and IDEA, and specifically the principles of FAPE, NDE, and LRE, what did GNET's program fail to do? The GNET's was the Georgia Network for Educational and Therapeutic Support. And in the article, it stated that students with behavioral disabilities were sent to GNET's because neighborhood schools lacked supports and services. Now, what GNET's failed to do was give those students the supports and services that they needed to become a functioning member of society. Essentially, they were just throwing them from one burning ship to another because they weren't supporting them and they weren't giving them services to help with those behavior-related disabilities. And in the article, it mentioned that they were taught by computer programs and not by certified teachers. GNET's was often housed in poor quality facilities. They were also segregating students with disabilities into these outside buildings, the GNET buildings. And just a small note that in this article, I found it very odd that it said that the GNET's program, so the services may have been meeting the requirements of IDEA, but they weren't meeting the requirements of ADA. And that's not true. The IDEA requires least restrictive environment. So I don't know why or how they got away with saying that they may have been meeting the requirements of IDEA, because they definitely weren't. And just, it was not a true statement about the IDEA not being very good, or not like a backbone, but the ADA was more for education. Whereas, before in our modules, we've learned that IDEA is more educational, where ADA is more like having to do with the medical disability or like disabilities outside of the education world. So this article was just really confusing in that sense. The second question was, what will your agenda for this meeting look like and who will you invite? So for what the agenda will look like, I'm going to start by welcoming everyone there, and begin talking about the article as well as areas of concern, like the ones that I mentioned before. I would also talk about like a new vision for a program for schools, maybe having the GNET's program in schools instead of segregated, so that we would be able to provide support in the classroom based off the GNET's idea of helping behavior-related disabilities. So that would be giving like resource support for students with disabilities and behaviors. And then, moving on to the agenda, answer any questions about the new idea for the program. And who would I invite? Well, I would invite who they said in the scenario. That said the special education directors in my region, along with all principals, district leaders, and disability rights activists, as well as the Department of Justice, the people who conducted the investigation in the first place. That way everybody gets a well-rounded idea of what the new program would look like and why it's so important to change what we have into what could be in the future. And that kind of goes into the third question of what criticisms do you anticipate being leveled at your office? Honestly, I would feel like a lot of the criticisms would come from parents who believe that the students with behavior should not be in the classroom. And to answer or to prepare to address these, I would look at the law, the letter of the law, as well as the spirit of the law, and say these kids have a right to be in the classroom with the supports that they need, and just coming at it that way. There also might be some people who would want this changed right away, but the Tower of Pisa or Rome wasn't built in a day, and changing this years long since the 1970s in Georgia. Changing that is not going to happen quickly, but it can happen. And I definitely believe that it should. Thanks.